The boutique was a world of luxury, its white marble floors gleaming under soft golden lighting, the scent of rare perfumes mingling with the hushed melody of a string quartet playing through hidden speakers. Every detail, from the velvet ropes at the entrance to the discreetly positioned security guards, whispered exclusivity. This was not just a store, it was an experience, reserved for those who truly belonged. Helena stood at the heart of it, a woman who embodied precision and authority. Her tailored navy suit fit like a second skin, her heels clicked with purpose, and her sharp eyes swept across the boutique like a watchtower, detecting even the slightest disruption in the seamless perfection she had cultivated for over a decade. Here, luxury wasn't just about price tags, it was an identity, a privilege earned, not stumbled upon. Then, she saw her. The moment the woman crossed the threshold, a ripple of dissonance disturbed the boutique's harmony. Helena's gaze locked onto her, narrowing ever so slightly. The contrast was jarring, worn-out jeans, simple sneakers, and a gray sweatshirt with the word "love" scrawled across the chest. No designer labels, no elegant silhouette, nothing that signaled she belonged here. A mistake. Helena exhaled slowly, masking her immediate distaste behind a composed expression. This was not the first time someone had wandered in, dazzled by the boutique's grandeur, mistaking it for a tourist attraction. She knew the type, curious but clueless, the kind who wasted time, touched what they couldn't afford, and left with nothing but a misplaced sense of entitlement. She turned slightly, her voice smooth but laced with quiet authority. "Clara," she murmured to one of her junior associates, barely moving her lips. "Stay close." Clara nodded, her own polished demeanor faltering slightly under Helena's unspoken command. The woman, oblivious to the unspoken judgment, moved with a strange kind of ease. She trailed her fingers along the glass cases, pausing to admire an elegant evening gown draped on a mannequin. There was no hesitance, no insecurity, only quiet curiosity. Helena's irritation deepened. This one was different. Most outsiders hesitated, intimidated by the air of exclusivity, the unspoken understanding that they did not belong. But this woman? She walked as if the walls did not whisper her inadequacy, as if she did not feel the weight of every scrutinizing glance. And that was unacceptable. Helena straightened, adjusting the cuff of her blazer before making her move. Her heels tapped against the marble floor, each step deliberate, precise. As she closed the distance, she conjured the same polite, yet chillingly distant smile she had perfected over the years. "May I help you?" The woman turned. Her eyes met Helena's, and for the briefest second, Helena hesitated. There was something in that gaze, calm, unwavering, utterly unfazed. Helena brushed off the flicker of unease and tilted her head slightly. This woman needed to leave. And Helena would make sure of it. The woman didn't flinch. She didn't fumble for an excuse, didn't shift uncomfortably under Helena's scrutinizing gaze. Instead, she smiled, calm, measured, as if she had already seen this moment play out and found it utterly unremarkable. "I'm just looking," she said simply, her voice smooth, steady. Helena's lips pressed together, a polite but tight expression of patience. Looking. Of course. That was always the excuse. People like her came to admire, to dream, to pretend, but they never bought. And Helena had no interest in entertaining fantasies. "This boutique offers a highly curated selection," she said, keeping her voice silk-soft but firm. "Our clients appreciate exclusivity and discretion." The woman's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "That's lovely," she said, her gaze drifting to the delicate fabric of a nearby gown. "It must be wonderful, working in a place like this." Helena's smile didn't falter, but something in her stomach tightened. There was something about the way this woman spoke, something that felt off. Not in the way of the usual wide-eyed wanderers who stumbled in, overwhelmed by wealth they could never touch. No, this woman wasn't overawed. She wasn't even slightly uncomfortable. It was almost as if she was assessing Helena, rather than the other way around. I've been here for over a decade, Helena replied smoothly. We take pride in maintaining an atmosphere that reflects the quality of our clientele. Ah. The woman nodded, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. So you decide who belongs here. Helena's smile sharpened. We ensure our guests receive the experience they deserve. The woman hummed lightly, as if considering something deeply amusing. Then, with the same unhurried ease, she reached out and touched a clutch, delicate black satin with a crystal-encrusted clasp. Helena took a measured step forward. That piece is handmade, limited edition, she said, watching carefully. The woman lifted it slightly, testing its weight in her palm. It's beautiful. Helena's patience thinned. It's also nearly $20,000. She expected a flicker of hesitation, the inevitable crack in composure that always followed when someone realized they were out of their depth. It never came. The woman merely smiled again, softer this time. That's quite a statement. Helena's fingers curled slightly at her sides. Would you like to see something else? She asked, keeping her tone polite but unmistakably dismissive. The woman set the clutch down gently, turning to face Helena fully now. I think I'll just keep looking. Helena exhaled slowly, forcing herself to remain composed. She couldn't outright tell someone to leave, not without a legitimate reason. But there were other ways to make it clear they weren't welcome. Her eyes flicked toward Clara, giving a barely perceptible nod. The younger associate immediately moved to hover nearby, a quiet but obvious reminder that the woman's every movement was being watched. Still, the woman remained unbothered. If anything, she seemed mildly entertained. Are all your customers watched this closely? She asked, tilting her head slightly. Helena's expression remained impassive. We take great care in ensuring a seamless shopping experience. Of course. And then, as if she had all the time in the world, the woman turned away and continued to browse, her fingers grazing the smooth silk of a gown that Helena knew she would never afford. Helena felt a sharp pulse of irritation. This was a game, then. A subtle one, but a game nonetheless. Fine. She had dealt with situations like this before. She always won. Stepping forward once more, she folded her hands in front of her, feigning warmth. We actually have private shopping appointments for more serious buyers. If you're interested in making a purchase, I'd be happy to set one up for you. It was the perfect, refined way of saying you don't belong here. The woman turned back to her, smiling in a way that made something cold run down Helena's spine. That's very thoughtful, she said. But I think I'm fine right here. Helena's jaw tightened just slightly. Who was this woman? Before she could formulate her next move, the boutique doors opened once more. The familiar chime rang softly through the store, but it wasn't the sound that made the air shift. It was the silence that followed. Helena saw it first in Clara, the way her eyes went wide, her lips parting slightly in shock. Then it rippled outward, an almost imperceptible wave of realization sweeping through the boutique. The soft hum of conversation died. The energy in the room shifted. And then Helena turned. Her stomach clenched. Standing at the entrance, his presence effortlessly commanding the space, was Keanu Reeves. For a moment, the world seemed to tilt. His dark hair was slightly tousled, his posture relaxed, yet there was an undeniable presence to him, one that demanded attention without ever needing to ask for it. He stepped inside, glancing around briefly before his gaze landed on her. His entire expression softened. And then, in the warmest, most familiar tone, he said. Ah, there you are. And Helena's entire world came crashing down. The weight of silence in the boutique was suffocating. Every breath, every movement seemed suspended in the air as Keanu Reeves strode forward, his long, effortless steps carrying him toward the woman Helena had just spent the last 10 minutes trying to dismiss. He stopped beside her, a slow, easy smile spreading across his face. I was wondering where you wandered off to. The woman, Alexandra, Her name is Alexandra. Helena's mind supplied in a delayed burst of horror, tilted her head up to him, her eyes lighting with something warm, something intimate, something that didn't belong in the world of strangers. Helena stood frozen. No. No, no, no. Her pulse pounded against her ribs as reality began to settle into place, each piece of the puzzle slotting together with agonizing clarity. Alexandra Grant. Alexandra Grant. Not just any woman. Not just another tourist with no business stepping into this boutique. She was his. The artist. The philanthropist. The partner of one of the most respected, most beloved actors in the world. And Helena, poised, polished, perfect Helena, had just treated her like she was a nobody. Heat flooded her skin, but she fought to maintain control, her years of experience in high-end service forcing her lips into a carefully neutral curve. She could still recover. She could still fix this. Ah, she exhaled, smoothing down the fabric of her blazer as she took a small, calculated step forward. My apologies, Mr. Reeves. I didn't realize. But Keanu wasn't looking at her. His focus remained entirely on Alexandra, his expression soft with something utterly unbothered. As if the rest of the store, the weight of the attention, the unrelenting hush that had swallowed the space, none of it mattered. You find anything you like? He asked her. Alexandra smiled, her voice as effortless as ever. Oh, just admiring. Helena's stomach twisted. Keanu finally turned his head, his dark eyes landing on her with quiet curiosity. There wouldn't be a problem with that, would there? His tone was even, smooth, but there was something there, something just beneath the surface, a quiet edge of knowing. Helena straightened. Of course not, she said quickly, forcing her most gracious smile. We're always happy to assist our guests. Alexandra let out a soft hum, running her fingers along the edge of the nearest display. Oh, Helena was very attentive. Something in the way she said it, light and pleasant, yet sharpened at the edges, made the muscles in Helena's back pull tight. Keanu said nothing for a moment. He simply studied her, his eyes never wavering, never blinking. The weight of that gaze, calm yet dissecting, made her suddenly feel like she was the one being evaluated, judged, measured. And for the first time in years, Helena had the sinking realization that she was coming up short. She needed to get ahead of this. Miss Grant, she said smoothly, keeping her voice warm, controlled, if there was any misunderstanding earlier, I assure you. Alexandra turned, her eyes locking onto hers. Misunderstanding? Helena's fingers curled slightly at her sides. Keanu's gaze flicked between them, then back to Helena. Yeah, he said mildly, crossing his arms, the faintest crease forming between his brows. I'd like to understand that too. Helena's throat tightened. Damn it. This was a disaster. She needed an exit, a way to pivot, to regain some semblance of control. She pulled in a breath, adjusting her posture. I simply wanted to ensure that Miss Grant had the best possible experience in our store. As I do with all our valued customers. There. That sounded professional. Neutral. But Keanu only lifted an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. And how exactly did you do that? Helena felt the ground shift beneath her. It was subtle. Barely there. But it was happening. The power dynamic had flipped. She wasn't leading this conversation anymore. And she was suddenly, viscerally aware that every single person in the boutique, her staff, the other customers, the security near the door, were watching this unfold, drinking in every word, every movement. The wrong answer could cost her everything. So she gave the only answer she could. I simply wanted to be sure Miss Grant found what she was looking for, she said, the words slipping from her tongue with carefully measured control. And to ensure our boutique maintains the level of excellence our clients expect. There was a long beat of silence. Alexandra tilted her head slightly. Keanu exhaled, slow and deep, before shaking his head just once. "That's a shame," he murmured, almost to himself. Helena barely had a second to process the words before he turned to Alexandra, his voice dropping into something far lighter, something easy. "You hungry?" Alexandra laughed softly, shaking her head. "Always." "Then let's go." It was so simple. So final. Keanu reached for Alexandra's hand, their fingers threading together effortlessly as he turned them both toward the exit. And just like that, they walked away. Helena's breath hitched. No. No, this couldn't be happening. She took an instinctive step forward, her lips parting, but before she could form a single word, she saw it. The ripple. It started with the other customers. The shifting glances, the hushed murmurs. Then it moved to her staff. Clara, standing rigidly at the register, her expression tight with something between discomfort and "I told you so." And then, finally, the weight of her own realization crashed over her like a tidal wave. This wasn't just about them. This was about everyone else in the room. Keanu Reeves had just walked out of her boutique. Not as a satisfied customer, but as someone who had chosen to leave. And he hadn't just taken Alexandra with him. He had taken the store's credibility, its reputation, its exclusivity. In the span of 5 minutes, Helena had managed to make the worst mistake of her career. And the consequences were only just beginning. Helena stood frozen, her body rigid as the boutique doors swung shut behind them. The air in the store remained thick, heavy, as if the very walls had absorbed the weight of what had just happened. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The only sound was the distant murmur of the city outside, muted through the glass, as if the world beyond this boutique had no idea that inside, everything had just unraveled. Then, the whispers started. A customer near the register leaned in toward her companion, voice hushed but not nearly quiet enough. "Did you see that?" she murmured. "Keanu Reeves just walked out." He looked pissed. Not pissed, the man beside her corrected, his gaze still locked on the door. Disappointed. "That's worse." Helena's throat constricted, but she forced herself to keep her expression composed. This was salvageable. It had to be. It wasn't as if Keanu Reeves would go out of his way to make this public, right? He wasn't the type to create a scene. This could just be an unfortunate moment, one that would pass. And then her phone buzzed. With dread curling in her stomach, she pulled it from her pocket and glanced at the screen. A message notification. A name she recognized. Her boss. She swallowed hard and tapped the screen. "Call me. Now." Her pulse spiked. She turned, moving briskly toward the back office, her heels clicking against the marble in a rhythm that felt far too loud in the silence. As soon as she shut the door behind her, she pressed the call button with slightly trembling fingers and brought the phone to her ear. The voice on the other end was immediate. Sharp. Controlled, but brimming with barely restrained fury. "What the hell just happened in my store?" Helena straightened instinctively, gripping the phone tighter. There was a misunderstanding. A customer came in, I wasn't aware of her identity, and..." "Not just any customer, Helena," her boss cut in, his voice dangerously low. "Keanu Reeves' partner. Do you have any idea what's happening online right now?" Her breath stilled. "What do you mean?" A sharp exhale. "Open Twitter. Instagram. Hell, open any news site. There's already footage. Someone filmed it." The floor beneath her seemed to tilt. She fumbled with her phone, pulling up her browser, fingers moving too fast, too clumsy, as she typed his name into the search bar. And there it was. A flood of posts. Luxury boutique manager snubs Keanu Reeves' girlfriend, watch his iconic exit. Keanu Reeves' graceful takedown of snobbish store clerk is pure class. That boutique just lost my business. Who judges people like that in 2025? And worst of all, video clips. Dozens of them. The entire interaction, captured from multiple angles. Helena standing there, her posture stiff, her expression controlled but unmistakably dismissive. The shift when Keanu entered. The way his voice, calm, even, but cutting, had subtly unraveled her defenses. And then, his final words. His exit. The weight of it. A sinking feeling settled in her gut. Helena, her boss snapped, dragging her back to the present. Fix this. Now. But how? Figure it out, he barked. Because if this store's reputation takes a hit, so does your position. The call ended. Helena slowly lowered the phone, staring blankly at the wall in front of her. For years, she had built this boutique into an untouchable oasis of exclusivity. She had prided herself on curating an experience for the right kind of clientele. And in a matter of minutes, she had turned that exclusivity into elitism. Into arrogance. And now, the entire world was watching her fail. Her breath came faster, shallower. No. No, this wasn't happening. A sharp knock sounded at the office door, snapping her back into the moment. Miss Helena? It was Clara. Hesitant. Careful. There's a situation. Helena swallowed hard and forced her expression into neutrality before opening the door. The boutique was no longer the quiet, pristine sanctuary it had been an hour ago. The energy had changed. Customers had left, some shaking their heads, others outright muttering about how they had planned to shop but decided otherwise. A few lingered near the entrance, phones out, scrolling through the very posts that had just turned her world upside down. Clara shifted uncomfortably. Some of the regulars have already cancelled their appointments for the week. Helena's stomach twisted. How many? Clara hesitated. Half. Half. That was the beginning of the end. Helena took a slow breath, her mind racing for a solution. Damage control. Public relations. An apology? No, that would only confirm guilt. A statement about store policy? Too cold. And then her gaze landed on the store entrance. On the boutique's gold-lettered tagline, etched across the glass. Luxury is an experience reserved for the refined. It had once been a symbol of everything she had stood for. A mantra. Now, it felt like an accusation. Her throat tightened. When had she let herself believe that exclusivity meant judgment? When had she started seeing people as categories instead of individuals? A memory flickered. Years ago. A younger version of herself standing outside a luxury boutique, dressed in simple clothes, staring at the window display with quiet admiration. Back then, she had dreamed of stepping inside. Of belonging. Now, she had become the very thing that would have turned her away. The realization settled heavily in her chest. She had been wrong. And for the first time in a very, very long time. Helena didn't know how to fix it. Helena sat in her office long after the boutique had emptied, staring at nothing, the soft hum of the city beyond the glass walls a distant murmur. The boutique was supposed to be a fortress of refinement, a place where perfection was curated and preserved. Now, it felt like a stage where she had just delivered the worst performance of her life. Her phone vibrated again, another headline flashing across the screen. Another customer canceling an appointment. Another comment tearing her apart. This isn't just about one mistake, it's about a culture of elitism. If you don't evolve, you die. Helena exhaled sharply. The words stung because they were true. For years, she had controlled every detail of this boutique, every interaction, every element of who was allowed to belong. And now? That power was slipping through her fingers, and she knew, that if she didn't act fast, she would be the next thing discarded. She pulled open a drawer, fingers brushing against an old photograph tucked beneath receipts and reports. A much younger version of herself stared back, a girl standing outside a boutique, eyes wide with awe, dressed in nothing remarkable. She had looked at luxury the way one looked at something unattainable, something meant for other people. When had she become the kind of person who would have turned that girl away? Something inside her cracked. The next morning, before the store opened, Helena gathered her staff. They stood stiffly, uncertain, waiting for the usual routine. A speech about sales numbers. A reminder about standards. A warning about expectations. But Helena didn't do any of that. Instead, she took a breath and said the one thing she never thought she'd say. I was wrong. The word settled heavily in the air, hanging there, unnatural in her own voice. Clara's eyebrows lifted slightly. A few of the others exchanged glances. Helena folded her arms, pressing forward. I've spent years making this place feel exclusive. But I think, somewhere along the way, I forgot what exclusivity actually means. I forgot that luxury isn't about turning people away. It's about making people feel something. And yesterday, I made someone feel small. No one spoke, but she could feel them listening. Helena drew in a slow breath. That's not the kind of place I want to run anymore. For the first time, there was no script. No carefully crafted corporate language to hide behind. Just the truth. She gestured toward the boutique entrance, toward the gold-lettered phrase etched into the glass. Luxury is an experience reserved for the refined. She stared at it for a long, heavy moment. Then, in front of her entire staff, she took a step forward. And peeled the letters off the glass, one by one. The silence behind her was deafening. Clara spoke first. So, what now? Helena turned, the remnants of the old words clutched in her hand. Now, she said, voice steady, we redefine what luxury means. The next few weeks were unlike anything the boutique had ever seen. Policies were rewritten. Training sessions focused not on exclusion, but on genuine, meaningful customer experience. The phrase in the window was replaced with a new one Helena had chosen herself. True luxury isn't what we wear. It's how we treat each other. The shift wasn't instant. Some customers who had once reveled in the boutique's exclusivity left, muttering about standards slipping. But others, new customers, different customers, began walking through the doors, hesitant at first, then surprised to find themselves welcomed. The first time Helena saw a woman enter in worn jeans and sneakers and watched as a staff member greeted her warmly, without hesitation, she felt something loosen in her chest. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was right. One evening, long after closing, she stood in front of the boutique, staring at its reflection in the glass. The boutique hadn't changed. Not physically. The lights still gleamed. The displays were still pristine. The scent of expensive perfume still lingered in the air. But something had changed. And so had she. As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed with a new message. A name she never expected to see again. Alexandra Grant. For a long moment, she just stared. Then, slowly, she opened it. Change is rare. Growth is rarer. I hope your boutique continues to thrive. Maybe one day, I'll visit again. A small, wry smile tugged at Helena's lips. She hadn't earned that visit yet. But for the first time, she wanted to.